If you're thinking about selling in the next 6 to 12 months, there's one decision that will determine whether you move cleanly into your next chapter or stay stuck longer than you planned. And it's not pricing, it's not timing, it's whether you have a real plan for what happens after you sell. I'm Betty Russo, North Jersey real estate broker. And what I see right now is a lot of homeowners holding back, not because they don't want to sell, but because they don't know how to move without creating more risk for themselves. The pressure point isn't selling your home, it's what comes next. Right now in North Jersey, active inventory is still down year over year. That means qualified sellers are not waiting long for offers. The bottleneck has never been the sale. It's always been the transition. That's where your leverage lives, and that's what this episode is built to solve. Most sellers believe they need to have the next home fully figured out before they make a move. That if they don't, they could end up without a place to go, or worse, owning two homes at once. But what's actually happening is they're staying in a holding pattern because no one has walked them through how this actually works in real scenarios. What I've seen happen, and this is more common than most people realize, is that a homeowner waits too long to start this conversation. Not because they weren't motivated, but because they assumed the planning part would figure itself out once they had a buyer. And then they get an offer, a strong one, and suddenly they have 45 days to find a home, negotiate a purchase, and close in a market where good inventory moves in days, not in weeks. All right, sometimes in weeks. There's not a crisis there, but it's pressure that could have been avoided entirely, and pressure leads to decisions that aren't fully strategic. A purchase made in a hurry, a price point that stretches further than it should, or than you want it to, a neighborhood that was second on the list, not first. The homeowners who come out of this cleanly are the ones who started strategy conversation 60 to 90 days before they ever listed, not because the market required it, because they did. So the real decision becomes simple. Do you wait until everything feels certain, or do you move forward with a strategy that gives you control? My position is clear. You don't wait for certainty. You build a plan that removes the risk you're worried about. Because feeling stuck and not having a strategy are not the same thing, and most homeowners confuse the two. There are a few ways this can actually work, and they don't all look the same. Selling first with a plan is often the cleanest path. You control the timeline, you understand your numbers, and you can negotiate from a position of strength. That doesn't mean you're left without options. It means you create flexibility before you need it. In some cases, buying first can make sense, but only when the numbers, the timing, and your comfort level all align. This is not something you guess your way through. It has to be intentional. For example, if you have significant equity and your lender can qualify you without requiring the sale first, buying before you list, well, that can give you the real negotiating power on the purchase and eliminate the timeline pressure entirely. It's not the default move, but for the right client, it's the strategic one. Then there are contingent strategies where your purchase is tied to your sale. These can work, but they need to be positioned correctly, especially in a market where sellers have leverage. One of the most underused tools in North Jersey right now is the rent-back agreement. Here's how it works. You sell your home, the deal closes, proceeds land in your account, and you negotiate the right to stay in the property as a tenant for a defined period. It's usually a small period of time because the buyers do want to get into their new home, typically 30 days or less, sometimes more, but you've already extracted your equity. You still have time to find and close on your next home without a gap in housing. Just be cautious. It is tricky in a strong seller's market with little inventory, but we can find a way to make it happen. Most sellers don't know how to ask for this. Most agents don't offer it unless you push. But in a market where inventory is tight and your next purchase may take weeks to close, longer than that, but these days You just never know what you're going to find. Sometimes it's weeks, sometimes it's 30 days. I've closed on a house with a mortgage in 30 days, actually, just recently. This structure eliminates the where do I go in the meantime problem entirely. It's not complicated. It's just not commonly taught and commonly used. Let me give you a real example of how this plays out. I did work with a couple in Bergen County. They were longtime homeowners. They were ready to downsize. They had been thinking about it for a couple of years, and every time we talked, the conversation stalled on the same question. But where are we going? Their home was worth significantly more than what they paid for. The equity was substantial, and they were completely qualified for their next purchase. But they had convinced themselves that they needed to find the next home first because the idea of selling without a destination felt like a leap they weren't ready to take. We mapped out the strategy together. They had the equity to support a bridge structure. Their lender confirmed they could qualify without selling first. But after reviewing all the options, they chose a different path. Sell first with a rent back. Their home sold in 11 days. They negotiated a 60-day rent back with the buyer. Obviously, they had more time than that because even though it sold in 11 days, they didn't close that soon. But once they closed, they negotiated a 60-day rent back with the buyer. And in that 60-day window, they found exactly what they were looking for. They did go a little bit out of this North Jersey area, truth be told, but they did find what they were looking for. They went under contract and they closed without spending a single night in temporary housing or living in their family's guest room. 2 years of hesitation, 60 days to resolution. That is not luck. That's what happens when you build the plan before you need the plan. You don't need a perfect sequence, you need a controlled one. Here's what I see happen all of the time. A homeowner wants to sell, but they pause because they don't know where they're going next. Months pass, the market shifts, and now they're dealing with a different set of conditions than they would have had they just built a plan earlier. That delay is not about the market, it's about uncertainty. And uncertainty is where people give up leverage without realizing it. So, how do you know which strategy is the right one for your situation? There are 3 questions I walk every client through before we talk about timing, pricing, or any of the logistics. The first question: what does your financial picture look like if you own 2 homes for 60 to 90 days? Not hypothetically, actually. Could you carry both mortgages without real strain? If the answer is yes, buying first becomes a viable conversation. If the answer is no, or even maybe, selling first gives you the stability you need to make a clear-headed purchase. The second question is, how defined is your next chapter? Do you know the town, the price range, the property type you're moving toward? Or is that still wide open? The more defined your destination, the more options you have. The less defined it is, the more important it becomes to sell first and create financial clarity before you start shopping. Question 3, how much of this decision is emotional and how much is financial? Both matter, but they need to be separated. I've seen clients make a rush purchase because the idea of being between homes felt uncomfortable, even when the numbers supported waiting. And I've seen clients hold back from a great purchase because the fear of carrying 2 properties won, even when the math said they were fine. Knowing which one is driving your hesitation changes the entire conversation. If you can answer those 3 questions clearly, you're already ahead of most sellers who come to this decision. And if you can't, that's not a problem. That's exactly what this conversation is for. If you're thinking about selling in the next 6 to 12 months and you're not sure how to line up both sides of the move, this is exactly the kind of strategy we map out together. It's not about pushing you to sell. It's about making sure that when you do, it works. The biggest shift I want you to take from this is so simple. There's almost always a way to structure the move. It just depends on your situation and how early you start thinking about it. What keeps homeowners hesitating is not the market, it's moving without a roadmap. Selling your home is one decision. Moving into the next one is where most of the hesitation lives. And once you understand how to connect those two, everything starts to feel a lot more doable. If you're planning to sell in the next 6 to 12 months, this is a stage where clarity matters most. Not when the sign goes in the yard, way before then. Because once you realize this is actually possible, the next question always becomes, what does your home actually look like in today's market? And if you want that answer before the next episode drops, reach out directly. A quick conversation with me will tell you exactly where you stand. And that's exactly where we'll go next. I'm Betty Russo. See you next time.